Welcome back to Rallyslide, a channel dedicated to the WRC. Today we are starting something new, a podcast. And in today's podcast we spoke about Craig Breen, who tragically lost his life in a testing accident. And today I will also be joined by a good friend of mine who is also a long-time rally fan, Eli. Good evening.
Good evening, Gal. Pleasure to see you in this lovely evening. I wish the circumstances were better. As you already mentioned, Craig Breen tragically lost his life a couple of weeks ago in a pre-event test in preparation for Rally Croatia, only at the age of 33. His co-driver James Fulton was left unscathed from the scene. However, we lost Craig, in my opinion, and many others, way too soon. Today, as Gal already mentioned, we're going to discuss the long but still relatively short career of Craig Breen. Gal, would you like to start?
Yes, Breen actually has been driving. He was originally a go-kart driver. He was from a family with rallying heritage. His father was a rally driver in Ireland, and Breen actually started his rallying career at age 17, 2007, local rallies in the UK and Ireland. He made his WRC debut at the Fiestas Trophy Cup in Rally Portugal back in 2009. And since then, we have seen a driver that goes and goes until the top level.
Yes, so as you mentioned, he started in the Fiesta Cup. In 2011, he went on to win what was then the Junior Academy, with Fiesta R2. And then the following year, in 2012, he won again the upper category, the SWRC, equivalent to today's WRC2 category. And during that period, he also started competing in the IRC, which later became the ERC, as we know today, driving a Peugeot first, driving a Peugeot 207 S2000, which he took a few podiums with, if I recall correctly.
In 2012 or in 2013?
2013 in the Jana Rally.
In 2013 it was at the ERC. 2012 he competed in the IRC, but part-time. So what did you mean exactly?
That in 2013 it became full-time drive with Peugeot in the ERC, and they merged, the IRC and the ERC back then. And he took a few podiums with the 207 S2000, including a podium in Latvia, if I recall correctly, the Jana Rally, Valais, and I think he finished third that season.
Overall, if I remember correctly, finished third.
If I recall correctly. The following year, in 2014, he continued competing in the ERC with Peugeot with their then new 208 T16 R5. He actually won in its first event in Acropolis. It was a mixed event back then. It was 1 day on tarmac and 2 days on gravel.
No, 1 day on gravel.
And 2 days on tarmac.
No, it was in VRC. It was 2 day events. So 1 day on tarmac.
Oh yeah, sorry, my bad. Yeah, 1 day on gravel and 1 day on tarmac. Anyway, he won alongside Scott Martin.
Scott Martin actually replaced the former co-driver of Craig Breen, Gareth Roberts, who also tragically died in an accident in the Targa Florio Rally in 2012 in the IRC Championship, which meant that Breen had to switch quite a few co-drivers over the years. But despite all the traumas, managed to set some very good times and very good results, and it didn't appear to affect him too much. He managed to recover from something which is normally traumatic. We know that a driver like Marco Martin before him, when his co-driver died, decided to retire. So it was very impressive from Breen in any way you look at it, after your co-driver who was with him from the start of his career, actually from the days of the Irish Championships, to still compete in rallying and have a passion after such a thing. And Breen actually from there only rised until the top level. In 2014, sadly, there were a lot of mechanical problems, so he didn't really compete. He had one more podium that year. I think it was in the Switzerland Rally.
Valais, yes. And also in 2014, he made his WRC debut with a WRC car, the Ford Fiesta WRC. In Sweden, he finished ninth. And in Finland, he also competed. He was about to finish ninth, but he retired due to medical reasons. The following year, in 2015, he again competed in the ERC and in the WRC2 category with the 208 T16 again. Unfortunately, he didn't manage to be successful as he was the previous year due to a lot of mechanical failures.
In the WRC2.
Yes, in WRC2.
In VRC, though, he managed to win 3 rallies and was in the championship fight. He finished runner-up, actually, and was very competitive.
He was runner-up to Lappy, wasn't he? Or was 2014?
Maybe 2004. I think 2015 he finished first. He's second. I think it was
Kajtanovic who finished first.
Kajtanovic.
Yes.
With a car that wasn't the newest car in the field.
And it wasn't as competitive as the Skoda Fabia R5 that came along that year. And it did earn him a drive in Citroën in 2016 with the DS3 alongside Chris Meek and Stéphane Lefebvre.
Yes, in 2016, as Eli said, Breen finally got his lifelong dream and got an official seat in a WRC car, a paid driver, which is what every rally driver dreams of. And we both remember his first ever podium in the WRC in Finland. It was a very impressive
emotional one. Very emotional, as a lot of you who've watched it back then saw his tears in his eyes and dedicated that podium to Gareth Roberts. And it was only his 5th time in a WRC car that he managed that, which was quite an impressive feat.
Also in a rally like Finland, which we know...
It was the fastest rally Finland to this day.
Up to this day. Not only that, it's even if it wasn't the fastest, it's a very dangerous event. And it's an event that you need a lot of experience. And Breen, on only his 2nd ever attempt in a WRC car, managed to get the podium. He had that year maybe a bit of a road position advantage, but still, it was a mega drive.
And it was his and Scott Martin's first podium together.
Thanks to his results in 2016, Citroën, when rejoining the sport with the new regulations and the new cars that came, decided to recruit him for the 2017 season when he shared the car with Stéphane Lefebvre and was in the same team as Chris Meek and Khalid Al-Qasimi. And he actually showed great consistency. He was a lot better than Lefebvre, who that year made a lot of mistakes. Sadly, he was driving a car which had a lot of problems. And as a result, he couldn't really fight for the top positions.
His best result was 5th, which he managed 6 times during the season. He finished 10th with 64 points. Unfortunately, the season after wasn't much better, besides one podium that he did manage, his 2nd podium ever, in Sweden, where he finished 2nd. Unfortunately, however, since Loeb came back that year, driving for 3 rallies in Mexico, Corsica, and Spain, Craig wasn't on the start list for Rally Mexico, so his momentum fell short.
Corsica. Also in Corsica.
Also in Corsica, yeah. So his momentum fell short, and later on that season, he couldn't recapture that same performance, which would score him another podium. And unfortunately, at the end of that season, Citroën decided to drop him for 2019 and instead go for a 2-driver lineup featuring Sébastien Ogier and Sepeka Lappi. And it's also worth mentioning that Abu Dhabi dropped their sponsorship for 2019, so that also didn't help Craig Breen's cause. Fortunately for him, in 2019, Hyundai had a new team manager, Andrea Adamo, and he liked to mix things up. He had a merry-go-round with his drivers. So Thierry was his constant number 1, and he had no more than 3-4 drivers for the 2nd and 3rd car. You had Sordo, Padden.
Mikkelsen? No, Padden no. Padden was out by 2019.
Sordo?
Padden, no, not Padden. Mikkelsen, Loeb, and...
Loeb and Breen?
Breen, 4 cars. Shared the other 2 cars of Hyundai. In around that time, he also actually drove in the R5 categories in local rallies in Italy and Ireland, and I think also in Britain. He was practicing. And he actually helped Hyundai that year, had a small part to play in the first ever manufacturers championship back in 2019. And we saw that Breen still has great pace. He won the Ypres rally, which was very impressive. He won with a new Polo R5 ahead of much more experienced drivers in that venue. He also had experience in Ypres, but not as much. And thanks to all of these things, he returned in 2019, as we mentioned before, to a Hyundai, and also helped actually Neuville. As we all know that Thierry Neuville somewhat struggles in a rally like Finland. So those of you may remember, he actually was told to give a position back to Neuville. They changed positions and put Neuville a bit more in the title fight that year. And he was driving one more rally that year in Wales. And for 2020, he would also start and show performances with the i20 despite not competing in many rallies.
Yes, despite the shortened season due to the coronavirus, he competed in Sweden instead of Loeb, only finishing seventh. However, in Estonia, when the WRC circus came back, he managed an impressive podium, coming second after Tanak.
It was a very impressive podium, and we all remember. And thanks to Visvik in 2021, a year later, he had a slightly longer podium and maybe his most successful season ever in the WRC, finishing the podium 3 or 4 times.
3 times in a row. He finished in Estonia second. He finished in Ypres second, and in Finland third. And that secured him his drive for M Sport in 2022, a full-time drive, which was the
highlight
stuff that dreams are made of.
Yes. And it appeared to be quite good. The CR was also for the first time, maybe with a drive that could show him a bit more. And Sebastian Loeb was there also part-time. And on their first rally, Loeb won and Breen finished third, behind the two Sebastians, who appeared to be at the time head and shoulders above everyone else who was competing. But sadly, things got down very, very quickly.
Yes, he had a crash in Sweden. Croatia, he did manage to finish fourth, losing out on a podium battle with Thierry Neuville. Portugal, again, he managed to finish in the points, but
it was a dreadful rally.
It wasn't a very good rally. Loeb also crashed out. In Sardinia, things did seem to improve with a second place.
He also said that the car got better. But sadly, this would be the last highlight for him this season.
And his last podium for that season.
As well. Sadly, in M Sport, things didn't turn out the way they wanted to. And it appeared like Breen was put under too much pressure as their full-time driver and as their first driver in the team. And there were a lot of mistakes and mechanical problems. Breen also had some unfortunate events. I actually was a spectator at Greece, so he had a puncture. I didn't see the puncture, but it showed how much bad luck he might have had that year. And despite being under contract for 2 years with M Sport, at the end of the season, the dream sadly shattered and both decided to part ways. And M Sport went with Tanak and Breen went back to a Hyundai to drive part-time, planning to drive in 2024 full-time. And he showed us one more time, which sadly turned out to be the final one, that he is still a very, very, very capable driver.
Yes, it was his best performance to date. He was very, very close at the top. He finished Friday leading, but unlike previous times where he was leading on Friday, he did manage to keep his lead and fight with Zoe Tanak for the lead. On Saturday, unfortunately, it wasn't to be. The only consolation was Hyundai asked him to finish behind Neuville, but due to a mistake by Neuville's part, at the end he did finish ahead of him and not behind him like they wanted to. But in any case, it was a very impressive showing by the Irishman, and it was lovely seeing him with such a huge smile on his face. And that's, I think, he was one of the drivers who were most passionate about what he was doing, and he really loved the sport, and you could tell by his expression on his face each time. And even when he was upset and mad with the car or anything, you could see he took things to heart, which might have hampered him in some occasions, but that's why we loved him so much, because he always wore his heart on his sleeve, and you could tell if something was wrong or if he wasn't hiding it. He wasn't hiding it, and when he was happy, it made everyone happy. It made everyone happy.
We're all ecstatic. We were
cheering for him.
Yeah, we're actually happier about Breen's podium on second, not because of Neuville's circumstances, simply because we're happy to see Breen again after a difficult year, smiling on the podium. Remember his sentence at the end of Rally Sweden: "Don't let anyone ever put you down."
Because only you know your true potential. Yes, and
we're actually happier about Breen's podium in Sweden other than Tanak's, which also was very impressive. But everyone talked actually about Breen's podium, as far as I remember. He also competed in 2 more rallies. He competed in 1 more event in the ERC, in the European Rally Championship at the FAF. He finished 6th with James Fulton in his program that was supposed to be the Portuguese Rally Championship. And he competed with his former co-driver, Paul Nagel, in the Irish Championship, driving classic cars. It's also worth mentioning that Craig Breen has a massive passion for all the rally cars, like the Ford Sierra and BMWs and the Metro 6R4. a Group B car, and he liked a lot this kind of cars and competed very regularly in them, and was driving at a lot of show events in Ireland and in Italy, I think, as well, and in
In the
Britain.
Monza Rally Show, he appeared
that's the event I
multiple
meant.
times, and he had such a passion for rallying that each time that he wasn't competing or competing part-time in the WRC, he always came back to Ireland, competing in his historic rallies over there, was the historic cars, which he massively loved. As much as it was an absolute joy for him to drive the Rally 1 car machines and the WRC modern Group B, you could call it, machines, he always loved coming back to Ireland and competing in the local events alongside Paul Nagel. He said, if I recall correctly, at the beginning of this season that he'll try to spend as much time as he can back in Ireland competing in those rallies. Unfortunately, obviously, it wasn't to be, and it's a huge loss for us as a rallying community to see that to no longer see him competing. We didn't think something like this could happen in this day and age. I mean, the cars are the safest they have ever been, and there's a saying that goes, you can always make it safer, but you can't make it 100% safe. I mean, this is motorsport, and unfortunately these things do happen, and I just hope that it won't happen for a really long time now, because it still is quite a shock, to be honest.
I actually had to compete in a motorsport, not to compete, I wanted to, but I took part in a motor race a day after Craig Breen got killed. And obviously, once you're behind the wheel, you don't think about this kind of stuff, but it's not the easiest thing in the world to get into a racing car after these kind of things. It just shows that at the end of the day, firstly, when you think of it, actually shows that there was a very long improvement, because when we think of it, it's the first time in almost 20 years such a thing happened.
Yeah,
so
since Michael Park.
Yes.
Unfortunately, these things happen, and we hope that, it's very sad for us, and it's hard to grasp.
No doubt about this subject. So to finish on a slightly more positive side, we will share our memories of Craig Breen. And actually, you met him in person.
Yes, I met him back in Corsica, 2015, when he was competing in the WRC2 category with the Peugeot. I talked to him after the event. I don't recall exactly where he finished, but we had a half an hour chat, maybe a bit longer. Honestly, it was a privilege meeting him. You can see straight away that that guy has a lot of passion for what he's doing, and I don't recall the exact specifics of what we talked about, but
Probably something with the weather, no? Because it was quite rainy on that day.
No, it wasn't. It was only on the first day that the two of the three stages got cancelled. The rest of the event went as is. No, I just talked to him about the next season, and I told him I hope he gets a seat. And it wasn't, which he did. It wasn't too obvious, because we already back then knew that Citroen would be going for part-time, and I think they already signed Chris Meek for the following season, so it wasn't 100% if he would be going there. And since Peugeot still have no intention of going to the WRC, I'm glad he got his drive the following year, and I'm honestly glad for all his podiums, and I wish we would have seen him now in Croatia compete. I'm sure he would be at the sharp end, and it's a huge loss for the sport, and us as fans, it's also a really huge loss. And when it happened, I couldn't believe it. And a friend texted me, Craig Breen, and I was like, what happened? Like, did he catch COVID or something? And sadly, I checked Twitter and saw Hyundai's statement, and left to tears, honestly. One of the nicest guys in the sports, one of the most passionate, one in a million, honestly.
For me, there are two memories, mainly. I sadly didn't met him in person, but I saw him driving last year, the M Sport, and one of the things I remember was actually on the power stage, and he had a massive slide, and I think he took some small part of a rear wing, and it was actually fascinating to watch. Breen actually wasn't a particularly aggressive driver in his driving style, but that specific corner for some reason. But it was quite exciting for all of us, the fans who stood in that corner to watch. That's actually a very good memory because as a fan. Beyond that, Rally Sweden this year, because it showed that Breen, on the right day and with the right tools, could be a very, very fast driver and the one who competes for victories. It always appeared sometimes that Breen somewhat struggled with confidence in rallies, but when it was there and it was perfect, it could be at the sharp end. Sadly, it didn't win rallies, but I'm
In
sure...
the WRC.
In the
of course.
WRC.
In the WRC,
True.
unfortunately.
But in the lower categories, when things went well, they went amazingly well. And I'm sure that if he would have been alive still, we would have seen him winning, I don't know if this year, next year, but I'm sure he would have won a rally. And once he would have won a rally, I'm pretty sure that the way to, I don't know if being a world champion, but competing for the world championship, I think it would have been a possibility, a great one.
Yes, I think this year, I mean, only we had Sweden, unfortunately, but he showed us that his mojo was back with him. And I'm pretty convinced that even if he wouldn't have won here in Croatia, he probably would have challenged for the podium. And in the upcoming events after that, if it's Estonia, Finland, maybe even the Central European Rally, if he would have competed there, I'm sure we would have seen him challenging for podiums and maybe even a win, because doing a part-time season also gives you a slightly better road position for some of the rallies. And if it wouldn't have come this year, then next year. I mean, it's only guesses now, obviously, but it's a case of what might have been.
And it would have been a lot. We are both sure of it. And there are two sentences that Breen left. You have to have fun. Life is short. And he showed it
Each time he competed.
Yes, and sadly in his case it's what happened. But he also taught us that way, the real way of living. If there are people who have some dream or something they generally like to do,
and other people are doubting you, then you should always believe in your true potential.
It is. And definitely these things will be remembered for a lifetime.
You'll be gone, but not forgotten.
This is our tribute to Craig Breen, along with a video a few days ago. So we'll conclude it here. If you also have any memories, or if you know anything we missed,
or anything you would like to share with us, please feel free.
Yes. Also, when it comes to the podcast, it's the first time we released a podcast after we tried to practice for 2 or 3 months. Yes. So obviously, if you can tell us any improvements, we would all like to hear it, both about the podcasts and the videos.
We will appreciate the feedback. And thank you again for joining us.
And like and subscribe if you liked the content. If you want us to talk about something specific in our next podcasts, you can also give us the ideas. That's all for today. And thanks for listening.
And we hope you join us next time.
See you then.
Bye.